welcome you to the Natural Alternative. Thank you for coming out tonight. I know everyone has an interest in natural healing, and this is a very important topic that we're going to be discussing tonight. My name is Bobby Connor. I'm a certified nutritionist, and I've worked with Karen over the years in natural health. But Karen is a certified massage and craniosacral therapist, and she's been working in holistic medicine for almost 30 years. And this journey into the world of autism, where there's so many unknowns, grabbed a hold of her when her son was diagnosed. And so she's authored this great book, which is so full of information, and she's going to lead you through her journey and give you a lot of information that's extremely valuable. So to turn over to Karen.
Thank you. Hello. I'm certain that everybody here, but I'd like to see a show of hands. If you have a child who's on the autism spectrum or has ADD, or you know somebody who does, raise your hand. And if this room was filled with a couple hundred people, we would see everybody's hands go up, even if it was a random talk, because 1 in 68 kids is diagnosed today, so it's so common. And the things that we want to know are really, why is it going on and what can we do? Because there's so much information that we're flooded with when we look for answers. And the same thing happened to me. Even though I had had a background in studying the brain and craniosacral therapy, I still, when my own son was diagnosed at the age of 10 in 2006, he's now 19, I was surprised at how little was available, especially back then, even less was available. Now, you'll get so much information thrown at you, like this diet or that diet, or don't eat gluten, or take this or take that, and I spent tens of thousands of dollars myself, and spent so many years researching that when I started to unfold the pie and got the answers I was looking for, and my son got better and better, that I realized I had to put the information into a book, because there was no way I wanted to just keep that all to myself. I know how many people are searching for the information, and it really is my quest to help as many people as possible, because your child can get better. And when I use the term healing, what I talk about really too are the symptoms. Autism is such a wide spectrum. It can be from very mild to where they just have social interactive disabilities or awkwardness, or they will have anxiety, all the way to children who are stimming. It might be 5 or 10 years old who are still in diapers. So you've got everything in between, and no two people are exactly the same. So, but there are a few principles that are key with everybody. And my own son had, there was anxiety, depression, of course, sleep issues, stomach aches, headaches, all of those kinds of things. And now today he's 19 years old, he's away at college on his own, and he's totally fine. And it's because of the information I found. And what I wanted to do for you really was to simplify it as best that I can. And we only have an hour tonight, so my website is naturallyhealingautism.com. There's a lot of free information on it. I have a regular blog. And of course, my book, Naturally Healing Autism, was specifically written for parents. It looks like a really big book, and it is, but I didn't want to leave anything out when I started writing it. It took me 6 years to write this book. And what I wanted to make sure was that I didn't leave other things out that could come into play that you need to know about. So there is all of that information and some research and studies, but then there is a portion of the book that gets right to what to do, like the how. And that's really what I'm going to go over tonight. Basically, you first have to start with the gut. People don't really realize all the time how much the gut influences the brain. They call the gut the second brain. It makes up 70 to 80% of the immune system. So it's hugely important. And because of today's diet and because of the environmental toxins, something called epigenetics is also coming into play, which means that we're actually changing our DNA. So you can prevent a future child from being born with issues by doing these same principles that I'm going to talk about as well. So first of all, almost all children who are on the autism spectrum, many of them are even born with a congested liver. We pass a lot of things to them in utero. Heavy metal toxicity, mercury amalgam fillings, the mercury goes right through the placenta into the unborn child. Candida issues, which are yeast problems, pathogenic bacteria, and then today's diet, because there are so many refined carbohydrates, that they all turn to sugar in the body when we eat them. So even if you think it's a healthy grain or whole wheat, actually gluten is a big portion of the problem today too. Bioengineering has created crops that have 50 to 90% more gluten than they did when we were kids, and that's because of the demand for processed food has increased. So they're using the glue in gluten. It's a binder, and so it's in so many foods, and when it gets into the body in such extreme volume, the body sees it as a foreign agent, and we get what's called a developed sensitivity. So it's not that everybody is born with a gluten allergy, it's that we have developed these sensitivities because our body has seen this foreign agent, and what happens is the body then signals to send out antibodies to fight, and those antibodies, when combined with this glutinous protein, what they do is they create these dangerous genes. They trigger things that set off properties. It directly affects the brain. I mean, you're really talking about hyperactivity, lots of mood disorders. There's a GABA system in the belly, and what happens in the gut with GABA is that when our GABA system is disrupted, then we get a lot of anxiety, because GABA, its job is to keep the neurons and the nerves especially at calm, to keeping them from overfiring. So that's where a lot of anxiety comes from. Depression as well. Serotonin, you may have heard of neurotransmitters. They're brain's messengers, and serotonin is one of the king neurotransmitters, and it has everything to do with mood, sleep, and appetite. And a lot of those receptors are also built in the gut, so a disrupted gut is also going to lead to lack of serotonin. And we'll get into brain support and repair too at the end. There are a lot of supplements that are natural that you can take to help your brain, depending on what's going on, because different parts of the brain are also acting differently for different people. Somebody might have a part of their brain that's being really overactive, and then another person, that part of their brain might be really underactive. So that's what's going on. They might need the same buildup of neurotransmitters, but it's a different part of their brain, so that's why their symptoms might be a little bit different. And this is everything that I'm going to kind of breeze over tonight is all in depth in the book, but I really wanted to make sure I didn't forget a few things. The liver is again almost always congested in these kids, and so our liver is our organ of detoxification. So if your liver's backing up, then you start doing detoxification processes before you support the liver. It can be too much. It can't process enough, and the symptoms can get way worse, and it can kind of throw the child into this chaos. So it's good to start supporting the liver. There's a product called Liver Life by BioRay that's fluid, a liquid. I have looked for liquid, powder, pill, sublingual forms of almost every supplement as well, because I know that most of these kids cannot and will not take a pill. So, and that's really important. And when your gut is not working properly, if you take a pill, a lot of the times it's not gonna be absorbed properly in the gut anyway. Decongesting the liver, and Bobby has some really great products. This whole area over here is on liver products. Selemarin, milk thistle is huge for supporting the liver, and so that's the first thing you do is start with the liver. Then you can move to probiotics. I like to give the liver stuff about a few days or so, one thing at a time. Make sure, see what one product is doing before moving on to the next, because if you start with multiple things at once, it might be, for one, too much for the system, but you also don't know what's doing what. So supporting the liver, giving it a few days or so to really start to cleanse out, and then you'll learn this as the parent, because you are your child's advocate. You know better than any physician anywhere what your child needs and what they're like, what's going on. At midnight, my son would wake up at 2 a.m. screaming with stomach aches, and I didn't know why. And so from all of this, you know, you can tell other people what's going on, but you start to know your child the best. So when you see those symptoms change, and that's why journaling is a good idea too. When you start something new, you can journal what's going on prior, and then see what changes you notice. Probiotics are key. They help to build the good bacteria in the gut, and they help to crowd out the bad bacteria like candida, yeast, and other pathogenic bacteria that build up and start to invade and become toxic. What happens too is many of these kids have leaky gut, which means that one of the causes is the whole gluten issue. That will start to compromise the intestinal lining. But also that candida, which is a yeast organism, Candida albicans is its true name, but it also has these little like corkscrew legs, and it will bore holes in the lining of your intestines. And so leaky gut, when you go to eat a food that you might have been fine for you once, now all of a sudden you're reacting to, is because that undigested food is getting through the intestinal wall and going into your bloodstream. Then it gets into your organs, it goes to your brain, and so this is part of the problem, is leaky gut. So there are other things we're going to talk about that can also heal the gut besides a particular diet that's important. So probiotics, there's something to know about them when you take them. They're absolutely key. I start out slowly with them. I never really go with a recommended, even a child's dose on a bottle, because for our kids especially, if they've got autism, ADD, and are very, very highly sensitive, whatever their issues are, they often can't even take the child's dose. You have to start with baby steps. My daughter, who's now 14, she's not on the spectrum, but she's had gut issues. When she was, I think, about 6, I started her with the Liver Life. You work up to about 44 drops at a time, I think it is, which now she's fine with. But at the time, she could only take a few drops, and that was it. So you really have to know, and if we have time at the end, I'd like we can do a little bit of muscle testing. It's a good way to test if a product is correct for your body, if your body likes that, if it's right for it, and then also to find out what dosage might be correct for your child as well, because everybody's going to vary. And then it'll change over weeks. So like every few days or once a week, you re-muscle test to see if you can up the dose a little bit, but you do it very slowly. But at least you have some knowledge at home as far as, what am I supposed to do today? How much am I supposed to give now? And you don't have to go back to an expensive doctor appointment every time you have a question. That's simple enough like that. And there are, so the probiotics, if you start with too many, also too soon, there's something called die-off reaction, which means that the bad bacteria, which you want to die off, are dying off so fast that they're releasing tons of toxins into the blood. And one of the things they release, that Candida releases, is a type of alcohol. So your child might actually seem like they're almost drunk at times, you've seen that. Yeah. And then gluten also has, they call them gluteomorphins, morphine type opiates in it. Same with casein, which is the protein in dairy. So that's where that really spacey look will come from. And while they'll crave the carbs, because that bad bacteria in their gut is craving the sugar that those carbs are giving them, and they're craving that drug, they're having that drug withdrawal, basically, coming off of them. So once they're off of it and the system gets cleared, they'll stop craving those things. There was a day when I thought my son was never going to eat more than 5 foods. Today he'll eat anything. He's not a picky eater at all. It's a completely different situation. And I know that that's really tough, getting your child to eat certain foods, healthy foods. Smoothies are a really good way to incorporate many products, especially supplements. Just make sure that they're not high in sugar. A lot of smoothies people put tons of fruit in. Even fruit is a natural sugar. Too much fruit is going to cause trouble, especially in the beginning. You can't have that much sugar in your system because it will affect your brain. So the probiotics you start out slowly with. And then there are a couple products here. One is the GI Revive, and one is Glutagenics by Metagenics. These both contain something called glutamine, which is an amino acid, and it helps to heal the gut lining. And they both contain other products that also help to soothe the gut lining as it's healing. So these are really helpful on that pathway. And then along with the diet, and when I say the diet, you can go, well, the book has it exclusively as well, or in full, but on my website you can also find the diet. Certain foods you basically want to avoid are all of the refined carbohydrates, all of the processed carbohydrates, mostly grains in general. They're having a new study done very recently by the National University in Australia, said that that the hypoglycemia, which is a blood sugar increase that's very rapid, insulin increase, too rapid insulin increase, I don't know how I put that correctly, but these insulin spikes are causing weakened brain volume. They're actually shrinking the brain. They're starting to call Alzheimer's the third type of diabetes. So you really have to be careful with eating too many grains. Our bodies, we come from, we're talking many, many, many years back, we're tribal. So we're hunters and gatherers. We ate meats and we hunted for, and we had shrubs and berries, and that was it. There were no grains in our diet. So our body has not even evolved to accept that and understand what it's supposed to do with it. And today's diet is so extremely filled with it, all of those foods, with the carbohydrates, doesn't know what to do with it. You're better off to eat more of a protein-based diet with vegetables. You need healthy fats. They are crucial. This old saying of low-fat diet is going to help you lose weight is completely false. In fact, if you eat good fats, it will help you lose weight. And when I say good fats, there's a big difference between good fats and bad fats. The good fats are things like olive oil and organic cold-pressed, avocado, coconut oil. Bad oils are the things more like a lot of the vegetable oils, corn, soybean, safflower, sunflower, those types. Canola, not good. They tell you it is, but it's not. So if you eat the bad fats, they actually they're called the omega-6s, and the good fats are usually called the omega-3s, and they kind of duke it out in the body. And because there's so many 6s usually overriding the 3s are actually weaker as far as fighting off the 6s. So we then become even more depleted of those vital omega-3s. So omega-3 fatty acids are, if there were one, if I could only give one product to somebody, I would say make it omega-3 fatty acids. They're fish oils. If you're vegetarian, they also make them in algae and plant form-based. But you want something, DHA and EPA are the two components that make up omega-3 fatty acids. And DHA specifically is neuroprotective. It also helps those neurotransmitters, those messages from the brain get sent. So this is going to help your cognition, it's going to help memory, it's going to help your gut, it's anti-inflammatory, and a big part of the problem, actually the whole big scheme of the thing, which is the biggest and utmost part of the problem, is inflammation. Everything that we're doing between diet and lifestyle and environmental factors, we're breathing many things, we're using lotions on our body that are filled with chemicals. Bobby has a ton of really great products. Also, Original Sprout is a really good, and their local company that makes shampoos and lotions and things that are even made specifically for babies, but anybody can use them at any age, that don't have any environmental toxins in them. Including gluten. Gluten is in a lot of personal care items. And when your kids are playing with Play-Doh at home, Play-Doh is gluten. It absorbs right through the skin, gets into the bloodstream, can get into the bloodstream from the skin within 20 seconds. It's that quickly absorbed. So you really do want to watch the products that you're using. Vitamin D, we're in flu season. That's another crucial supplement to know to use. It also is another one that is very neuroprotective. It's also antiviral, so it's one of the best flu fighters that there are out there. And Bobby's got elderberry, which is also a fabulous flu fighter as well. But vitamin D really, just along with the omega-3 fatty acids, it's very much brain protective. And you're wanting to help the brain not only be protected, because once it gets attacked, it's weaker and then it's more susceptible to all of the environmental toxins. And we're talking foods, water, air we breathe. Be sure to eat, if you can, organic. We live in one of the greatest hotbeds for farmers markets right here. There's tons of organic food available, and it's not that expensive if you go to the farmers market, especially. You can, and there's a saying, pay the farmer now or pay the doctor later. And it's so worth it, especially with your proteins. Your organic chicken, organic poultry, wild fish, not the farm raised stuff. They're feeding it. A lot of people, even if you're going to eat beef, make sure it's really grass fed and organic. You're wanting to really get rid of the pesticides in your and your child's diet, because their body is much more susceptible even than ours, especially if they are on the spectrum or already are having issues. That tells you how sensitive their body is. So what you might be able to handle, they might not be able to handle at all. So, broth is very, very healing, and like chicken broth with animal fats in it. Put the whole chicken with the bones and everything in to make a soup. And even just a couple of tablespoons before if they're going to eat something else before other food, will help to coat the gut lining and help to start healing it. So those, there can be simple things to start with, because I know it's hard initially to get the foods in them. And I've got a piece in here about picky eaters, and you kind of can reward them, like give them a bite of something that they, tell them they can have one bite of something they want if they'll take a bite of something you want to give them, just to kind of transition into new foods if that's the case. If you think about it, even you and I, most people, unless you really think about it and vary your diet, which is good to do for different vitamins and minerals, we're eating about the same 12 foods daily. Most kids are eating 5 to 10 roughly. So, if you can start shifting out of old patterns and just knowing the better things to do as far as products that you use on your skin and foods you eat, those are ways that you can help. I even have, I don't have any information on it here, but a water filter and a filter in our home that filters out heavy metal toxicity out of the water system in our home. You want to be sure that you're not drinking water that has any toxins in it as well. That's really common, and they put chlorine and ammonia in the tap water these days, and that directly destroys the good bacteria in your gut. So you're weakening your system by drinking it, as well as putting toxins in. Drinking out of glass is much safer than those little plastic bottles, and especially the ones that are not BPA free, and the little thin like Arrowhead bottles. And when those heat up in your car, they've been in there for a while, they release those toxins into that water. And you don't know when you bought it at the store in the refrigerator if it was sitting out in some parking lot, or some storage area for months before it made it to that store that you're drinking it out of, and it could have been sitting in the hot sun for a long time, and you have no idea. So, it's best to avoid those things, of course, if you can. Heavy metal detoxification is huge. When I was pregnant with my son, I had mercury amalgam fillings in my mouth. Mercury directly crosses the placenta and goes directly into the baby. So they are getting toxic from things that you are eating, from things that you have in your mouth or your body. So you want to be really careful. I've done a whole piece on prevention, how to clear a system before you even get pregnant, because they get so much in utero, aside from all the other things that you're exposed to in your, in our daily life. So, and then a lot of these things too, omega-3 fatty acids, high doses, are huge when you're pregnant and breastfeeding. You're really protecting their brain. So you're able to do things ahead of time and while you're pregnant and while you're breastfeeding as well. Heavy metal detoxification. There are some natural products. One is, I'm blanking on the name of it right now, modified citrus pectin. And it is a soluble fiber. It will gently bind to heavy metal toxins. It's been used for many, many years. There's a lot of studies behind it. It's very, again, very gentle. I would muscle test, start very slowly. You want to work your way up. And you want to do these in stages. You want to kind of get some probiotics and liver support and glutamine into the system. Then you're into the diet. You're doing the diet for, maybe a few weeks or so before you even think about heavy metal detoxification. The other thing with heavy metal detoxification is that mercury and candida, unfortunately, are friends. Mercury inhibits our body's natural ability to kill candida. So what happens is that by having that mercury in the system, it's harder and harder to clean your gut out and make yourself healthy again. So heavy metal detoxification will help to clear out some of that candida as well, and this soluble fiber helps to remove some of that as well. And I've got some other products in my book that I don't have here. They're online supplement. I haven't seen them anywhere else but online, but they will actually burst the candida blooms and sort of eat them up as well. It's very fascinating, some of the technology that's out there. So we do have nice natural options available. If you go the pharmaceutical route, I'm just going to say for people who are interested or thinking about it, DMSA is one of the main products that a medical doctor will use. And you need a prescription and you need them to help you with that. It's not something you do on your own at all. But there is a very specific detoxification with DMSA that I highly recommend that you educate your doctor on if he doesn't know about it, and many do not. It's in the book, but Dr. Andrew Cutler has put a whole process together using DMSA, but with very specifically timed intervals of alpha-lipoic acid, which Bobby has right here on her shelf. It's a very safe, very healthy, natural detoxifier. It's great for the immune system. It's a fabulous product to take regularly. But by taking specific amounts of alpha-lipoic acid timed, and it's very specifically timed. It's interesting. I think you even have to wake the child up in the middle of the night for one dose in the very beginning. Because if you don't get that alpha-lipoic acid in, those heavy metals, as they release into the system, will start binding into other parts of tissues, other organs, and they attach in other areas. They don't just go out. That's the problem with it. And it's not specific. So what happens is it binds, DMSA will also bind to minerals in your body, good minerals that you need. So it's not a real healthy route to do, but I like to let people know. So if you hear it from your doctor, this is really about educating you, because you're going to make your own decisions for your child. And I have spent 6 years writing this book, 8 years researching. I worked it with my son. He's healthy today, and I know how long it can take to seek out all of this information and to figure out how to put it together. So I have put it into a plan specifically that you could follow to understand what you can do, so you can save yourself the time and the money that I spent, and many are spending already, to just make this process a little bit more happen more quickly and more safely, because there are a lot of products out there that don't work, and they can be very harmful as well. That you want to make sure that you don't do that. The brain support and repair is the last step, because what I've seen a lot, and you may have noticed this with your own child, is, and I did with mine, is that you might try occupational therapy or apply behavioral analysis, but you're not getting results. And the child keeps getting sent there, and they're trying harder and harder, and they might say, well, we need to just be firmer with him, or things like that. And my son one day said to me, Mom, I want to, but I can't. And I really realized that he literally was not capable of following through with what was being asked of him because his brain couldn't do it. So once you have healed the gut, gotten the heavy metals and the toxins out, and then you kind of see who your child really is. You can start brain support supplements now, in the beginning, if you want to. It will not be harmful. The symptoms might just be a little less than, or a lot less than what they are now after you've gone through these other two steps, the other two stages. So brain support is very specific as far as supplementation. There's inattentive ADD, where they can't focus, they're kind of the couch potato, they're talked about as the lazy kid, they don't want to do anything. Well, that's actually just that they're low in a neurotransmitter called dopamine, and a particular part of their brain is not active enough. So the simple amino acid L-tyrosine will help to build dopamine in the system and is amazing for attentive ADD. I have a friend who, she had her daughter on a medication, she didn't want her on it, she was asking me, this was years ago, and I just said, try L-tyrosine, for her age and her size. I told her what I thought could be really helpful for her, and she did it. She was able to luckily get our child off of the medication, which was turning her child into a zombie and stunting her growth. And then she gave her the L-tyrosine, and her daughter all of a sudden went from like a D student to a B student, and A's and B's. I mean, she was like able to function in class and focus. And then there's the hyperactive ADD, where they just can't, they're impulsive, they're knocking things over, they drive everybody nuts, they won't calm down. But that's the same thing. It's low dopamine, but a different portion of the brain that is now overactive. So the tyrosine, again, helps to balance that out the same way. If my son had hyperfocus, which means that he would lock into something, and he literally could not hear you if you talked to him. It was so strong. So, and this is pretty common on the autism spectrum too. They'll really have one thing that they really focus on pretty hard. They'll have a really strong interest, but it's too strong. It needs balance. So they're usually low in serotonin and dopamine. So 5-HTP is a product that builds serotonin naturally in the body. It bypasses the liver, so it's not necessary to to worry about liver function as much. With 5-HTP, it safely builds it. You can muscle test, figure out for weight and age, and I have weight and age and the whole, like, how to figure it out in the book as well, for what your dosage might need to be for your child's age. Age and weight definitely is a lot of it. With vitamin D, it kind of tends to be more need, so same thing with omega-3 fatty acids. Some people might only need 300 or 500 milligrams. Some people might need, my son at age, I think 15, we were told he needed 2,000 milligrams of omega-3 fatty acids. So that varies, again, depending on particular need. So anyway, and I've covered them a little bit here in the outline with different things that you can do for different needs. Depending on what the issue is, hyperfocus, and then temper and memory imbalance, GABA, ginkgo, phosphatidylserine. Long-term limbic depression. Limbic depression is different than manic depression. Limbic is where you're just kind of almost always through life a little bit, like feeling a little bit depressed, or things will get you down easily, and it's more of and it's because the limbic portion of the brain is underactive. And so the supplements that are really helpful here, SAM-E is fabulous if your child is not motivated, which is part of this brain thing as well. It's great for motivation and limbic depression as well. And the D-L-phenylalanine is very, very good. Tyrosine can help balance that out as well. GABA, just simple things too. If like you just have some depressive issues, you can look at, you've got, again, it's very specific. I do consultations. The book is very informative, but it's kind of hard to go into everything right now because it's so individualized. But like GABA, I mentioned it earlier that we have a system in our gut and it gets weak and it doesn't work properly. Well, you can take a supplement that's GABA, and it helps for people who have anxiety. It's really great for anxiety. I've given a list at the bottom of local practitioners that are natural, integrative, and very helpful. There's something also called natural allergy desensitization, and we're lucky enough right here in Templeton. She has an office in Templeton and I think another in Paso Robles. Paula Vetter, she's here on the list. And what happens is that because our bodies do become sensitive to a lot and allergic to a lot of foods over time, especially our kids, because their system had been so weak, their body started seeing so many things as foreign agents, all of a sudden they can't eat anything. Well, we can, especially after the system begins healing, the gut begins healing, Paula is able to naturally desensitize. There's no blood tests, there's no poking. It's a very gentle process, and it's very, very helpful. I know that there was a study done on the work that she does, and of a group of people, and after a 5-year study, and after 5 years, 87% of those people were still 100% allergy-free from the things that they had been desensitized to 5 years prior. So, so that's another thing to look into as well, because the allergies, food allergies, sometimes, like with gluten for one, you don't have to have any digestive issues. There can be all these neurodevelopment, neuro issues going on for your brain, but because your stomach doesn't hurt, you think you're fine with it, but that's not the case. So behaviors, you'll notice too sometimes when your kids eat certain foods. Last week or 2 weeks ago, I put out a post on my blog. It's naturalhealingautism.com is my website. I put out a whole piece because Halloween and the holidays were coming on sugar, food colorings, and behavior. Food colorings alone can cause hyperactivity, irritation. You want to be careful of monosodium glutamate in foods hidden as different names like hydrolyzed yeast extract and things like that. That is one of the biggest causes of anger today that I see. It's also, because I'm a craniosacral therapist, I'll mention that the temporal bones around the ears are almost always, or always, I have never seen a child on the spectrum or a child with ADD that does not have temporal bone imbalance. It can sometimes come from the bone in the back of the head called the occiput jamming into the temporals at birth. And so what a craniosacral therapist can do is balance the bones in the head out so that the brain can function at optimum again. There can also be some other temporal issues going on. Temporals can affect speech, it can affect social interaction. So that craniosacral therapy is very helpful for those kinds of things as well, rebalancing the bones in the head. You'll see kids on the spectrum will hit their heads a lot. They'll slam it into like something hard, and yes, you want to stop them because that is dangerous, but it's an innate response that they're doing because they know their head hurts, their head is out of balance, and they're trying to correct it. It's a self-correcting mechanism. So yeah, I saw this little boy once. He was 8 when he came to me, and his mom said he literally, when he could pull himself, when he was a little guy, just strong enough to pull himself up onto a coffee table, he started slamming his head on the coffee table, and she said his first words were "head hurt," and he had headaches for all these years. And somebody told her about me. He came to me. For him, it was 1 session, and that was it. And I had him come back the next week to do a recheck. He was doing good. I see him now. He's like 15 now, and I'll see him and how you doing? It's like great, no headaches, no, never. No, I mean, and that child would have gone through life with a lot of headaches, but also other neural problems that could have developed as well from it. Heidi Seastrand is also on your list of practitioners locally. She's in Arroyo Grande. She's who we used for neurofeedback, and we had fabulous success. It's a way to retrain the brain from the wiring that was miswired once. It's kind of like a gym for the brain, but she's very specific as to individual needs. So that's another thing. Hyperbaric chambers are very, very good for helping. You want to make sure that it's hard-sided. There's a lot of people trying to basically make a big buck off of it using soft-sided chambers that release air. They're not enough oxygen. They're not the high enough net needed pressure. So if you seek it out, and there's information on this on my website and in the book, so you know more when you call. But and a way to find all of these as well. I also have a full list right on the homepage of my site for how to find a natural practitioner anywhere in the world for whatever specific thing you're looking for, whether it's an integrative medical doctor or a naturopath or a homeopathic doctor or hyperbaric chambers. I've gone through and given listings of the websites where you can find practitioners worldwide, which is helpful because you might have a grandchild or a nephew or somebody living in another state or another part of the world, and they might have these same needs, and so there's a way to find practitioners everywhere. Yes, I think we'll stop there, and there'll be time if anybody has any questions. I'm happy to answer them. I do consultations. I even brought a consultation sign-up sheet. Please buy my book if you have the need. It's very, very helpful. My goal is to save you the time and the money that I spent and give you a clear plan, because I know that that's mostly what what we need is that clear plan of what to do, and do it naturally and safely so that you're not harming your child. Thank you very much for coming. Does anybody have any questions? Yes?
I do. Stage 2, brain support.
Mm-hmm.
Does a child have a combination of the bullet points that are at the top?
Definitely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So they're
Yeah, and I had a parent actually contact me through my website asking me, and so if you go into the website in the search bar, you type in brain, it'll come up with a bunch of different past blog posts, and one of them is on how to look at different symptoms and kind of get, like I mentioned, anxiety's there, so GABA is good for that. Depressive symptoms, they're depending on what's going on, need 5-HTP because it's low serotonin. Sleep issues are also serotonin because, or need for 5-HTP because the serotonin builds melatonin. And if you don't have enough melatonin in your system, then you'll have trouble sleeping. So that's part of it as well. So yeah, there are definitely things to mix up there, yeah. Debbie?
For the GABA and ginkgo biloba, for example, are these ways we can put them and just add them to the food?
Again, Bobby has many in powder and liquid form here. I have there's a products page on my website. I've gone into lengths to find them as well in formulas that children could take, or that again could be opened up and put into a smoothie. And again, be careful with the smoothie ingredients otherwise, but definitely. And any capsule form can also be opened up and put in food.
So is there different types of foods that these might react to? For example,
citrus. And even when, yes, and thank you. And I think I did put it even on here. You really want to look also at, it takes a good 3 weeks for many of the natural supplements to really kick in. We saw differences in 1 week, but I like to tell people it might take a few weeks out. Don't think it's not working and stop, because this is a natural process. This isn't a drug. So it's going to have to build up in the system, and that's how we want it to be. And so, and it's usually with these supplements a lifelong thing. They need to take it forever, because it's usually, everybody's brain works differently, but but they'll need support with those areas. So you can, put them in other
like
foods.
with a teenager, I would have to figure out a smoothie that is made with light that the stuff wouldn't react with this.
It's mostly citrus.
Okay.
Even the modified citrus pectin, I think that's where I put the note in in the outline. It's under heavy metal toxicity there, because the citrus, as long as you take it 30 minutes apart, it's fine. Just don't want to take it right together, because citrus does react with many pharmaceutical medications as well. And people don't always know that. And be careful if there are any medications or supplements, anything, that they don't have food colorings. It's very common for them to have food colorings in them. Gluten, yeast, dairy, corn, soy, maltodextrin is another thing to be aware of. Like certain things that you want to read the labels, get to know what you don't want. And the simpler the label is, the more whole a food is. At the grocery store, if you go to regular grocery stores, avoid the inner aisles. The outside aisles are usually where the healthier food sources are. And so, and then learn how to read your labels, because they've gotten very tricky, and the FDA is allowing them to change the names of foods to hide it from the public, who is starting to grow in awareness and wants to read and wants to know what they're eating, but doesn't know, unfortunately, they're not making it always so easy for us to figure out. So, really the smaller amount of ingredients, and you know what they mean, then the better. And easy, did it grow out of the ground or did it grow, is it natural? And if it's not, if it has a bunch of extra added things to it, you kinda gotta be aware of that.
Yeah, and Karen, some of the foods, in answer to her question, like if they were to make a shake or smoothie, berries would be fine.
Berries initially are usually the better source of fruit because they have the fiber, so they don't affect the blood sugar levels as harshly as other fruit. Just initially, you want to be careful of too much fruit in one serving or in one day because of the sugar content. If you're really trying to get away from
Could
candida
they do a
issues a little bit.
smoothie, like in a NutriBullet, like with some kale and beet
Oh,
greens?
definitely.
Because you can disguise a lot
Right.
in those shakes.
Yeah. I mean,
But I
even-
wouldn't get a teenager if he wouldn't drink it.
It tastes like a berry milkshake, like a
Yeah,
boysenberry or strawberry milkshake. I don't know if they could do cacao as a antioxidant, so you can make
Yeah.
a chocolate with
Okay.
almond milk or rice milk.
Right.
Well, we have like the chocolate greens, it tastes like a chocolate
Yeah,
milkshake.
those
and
are
they're
really
full
good.
of greens, you would
Yeah.
never know.
If you find that grains and even rice create problems, just beware initially of protein powders that are a lot of rice protein because they can initially keep that candida alive. They still will feed it. Again, for weight loss issue, rice protein sometimes, if you're real sensitive to grains, might not be the best choice. There's hemp protein, if you're vegetarian and you're looking to stay away from, you gotta be, I really don't ever advocate soy. Soy is mostly GMO, genetically modified engineered product. If it's in a liquid form, it's hydrolyzed, which means that it's almost like monosodium glutamate, where it is a brain excitotoxin and it actually can kill the neurons in the brain. I just personally stay away from soy. And it's a high allergen on the list of allergens.
What about the pea protein?
Pea protein is good. It has a lot of carbohydrate though, so initially with the diet, you might not want to do a lot of that because again, you're doing that, the carb piece in.
So would you rather
Depending on what
use the
your
whey protein or clean, cold processed whey?
Cold process whey, and I would trust anything Bobby has in this store. You have to be very, very careful with products that are touted as natural and healthy. Whey can be bad in a lot of sources. So, and it's the way that they process it. And so, Bobby can give you more information on that here. I'm sure she's got some products if
And
you're
there's usually
interested.
artificial sweeteners and everything
Yes.
else out there.
Right, yeah. Yes? Mm-hmm.
You were saying that mercury from the mother could pass through the placenta.
Mm-hmm.
What about the father who has a lot of mercury in
Yeah.
his body? Did it change his DNA and could
It
pass
is.
on from the father?
More and more studies are coming out currently showing that the father, and we're seeing a lot of parents having children later in life, and more toxins are able to build, more DNA is able to shift. So yes, that is definitely a factor. So the father should cleanse the system as well as the mother. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We heard almond milk and stuff mentioned. What about coconut milk?
Coconut milk is usually a good source, and it's there's a company or a store called New Earth. It's right across from the Mission, just off of Monterey. I'm trying to remember, is that Choro in San Luis? And they make a coconut-based probiotic yogurt that is delicious. And they also make it in a more liquid form too, if you wanted to use it for instead of a milk source, if you needed something liquidy. It's non-dairy, very high in the good fats and very high in good probiotics as well. So yes, that they're a fabulous source for that particular one. But yeah, coconut's usually good. Almond milk can be good. Sorry, New Earth, and they're in San Luis.
Almond milk is really good for protecting the blood vessels.
Yes.
So that carries everything to the brain, so it's a good thing to incorporate with coconut milk.
Almonds are fabulous. Nuts in general are fabulous to eat. They're a combination of the good fats and protein. They're great to keep blood sugar balanced. They're a great snack to carry around. carry around almonds or macadamia nuts or, those kinds of things are really good. You want to watch overeating seeds like sunflower seeds because they're omega-6s. Some of it is fine, you just don't want to overeat them. And peanuts are not a nut, and they have a lot of other problems they carry, so stay away from peanuts as well. Molds.
On the nuts, do you recommend them be raw, or can they be roasted and lightly salted, or what do you?
I usually eat mine raw, but if you're wanting to eat them roasted and salted, it should be fine. And salt's gotten a bad rap. Himalayan sea salt is fabulous and actually very healthy to eat. It helps the adrenal glands a lot too. Adrenal glands are another whole thing that I've addressed in the book. Our kids have usually very weakened adrenal glands because of the stress on their system from the inner toxicity, and then because of the emotions that are created as well from their their biochemistry. Yeah, and
I just wanted to mention hair analysis. Have you ever
Oh,
used that as a detection?
thank you. Yes, I'm so glad you mentioned that. But Bobby, you carry them here or you order them?
The hair analysis?
The hair analysis. You do that?
We do it here.
Bobby does hair analysis. I forgot because I wasn't looking at my notes constantly, but hair analysis is a good way to check for heavy metal toxicity. And of course, again, there's no blood tests, etc. So it's a good way to do it. So Bobby can do that here. She also does consults in this facility as well. Yeah, that's really a good thing to check if you're wondering about your heavy metal issues.
So is there a blood test also for checking heavy metal, or will it show up in a panel as?
They can be inaccurate because it's what your body is excreting at that moment. And I've even read where the mercury can interact with the plastic cup in a urine test. And, so there are a lot of different things about blood and urine that do tend to be very inaccurate. And I talked to Bobby about this hair analysis test a couple days ago, and she feels it's very accurate, the one that she has here.
Actually, the EPA designates it as the most accurate way of testing for heavy metals.
There you go.
Because your hair is living tissue. And so things that are being excreted are being excreted out through the hair follicle as they are stored in the tissue. So, yeah, across the board, I get really great results. We don't always see mercury, but we do see a lot of mercury and almost always see aluminum. There's a lot of aluminum in our environment.
Yeah.
But like you were saying, I had amalgams when I was pregnant. My oldest son, I did hair analysis on him, and he shows mercury, and he was never vaccinated, so he got it from me.
Yeah, and then we're out with environmental toxins. Cadmium is another common heavy metal, and we get that from car exhaust. So I mean, there's a lot of things. You could be eating a piece of fruit that grew on a tree next to a highway, but you didn't know that when you purchased it, and you're getting a lot of that exhaust in that fruit or the piece of food when you eat it as well. So there are other ways. I wanted to mention two other things. I mentioned Paula Vetter does the natural allergy desensitization. She's also one of the very few people in the country who's been certified for this a mold analysis that can detect the chronic inflammation from mold from water damaged buildings. Can cause a lot of autism spectrum types of disorder, personality issues, behaviors. And would you raise your hand, Jessica? Jessica here works with Dr. Forsman, who's also on your list of practitioners in Rio Grande, and they do work with Lyme's disease, which is another very, very common thing missed in children on the spectrum or children with behavioral issues. So that would be another source for if you're looking. Sorry?
I do mold too.
And mold, okay. So yeah, there are. That's why the book is so thick, and don't let it scare you, because the first portion of it is just a lot of information like this that I'm going into now that I didn't want to leave out because you need to know about it. It's important. It could come up for you. I wanted to give you the answer you need and what to do about it and where to go for help. And then the second portion of the book is the how-to, okay, like what I've covered tonight in the stages, in the steps. So, a little bit more detailed so, you're not lost when you're in the middle of it. That was my hope. Yes.
Dr. Ira Chasnoff, about 15 years ago, started doing testing of drugs and alcohol on sperm. So this goes to the DNA. And they have found that those types of drugs mutate the sperm. Sometimes you have a two-headed sperm, no-tail sperm, this and that. But now people have taken his studies further, and he's doing the studies further as to how these different things mutate sperm. So it's just not from the mother.
Right.
But it
Who always
also
got blamed.
explains generational addictions and whatever is because of the mutated sperm.
Right.
So, but they've started doing it now with natural additives and chemicals, you know,
Mm-hmm.
how all this all enters into your genetics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if you've ever heard of Bruce Lipton. He is he's fabulous on information about genetics, and he really goes into what changes DNA and how the toxins and whether they're toxins from the environment or stress, and how that affects our genetics and the things that we sort of end up with in our being and our biochemistry that we pass along. So I have had great success with homeopathy as well, and the book has some resources on that that can actually help to shift some of those DNA changes too. So that's another resource to look into also. There's a whole end chapter on prevention as well, because you can. I've met young people today who have told me they're afraid to have children because they're afraid that their child is going to be born unhealthy, because you know the epidemic is rising. 1 in 68 kids, and if other studies are saying 1 in 50, and it's increasing every year. And you know the environmental toxins, the heavy metal, the environmental, the electromagnetic field pollution. I have information on my website about that as well. There are all these things that are invading our system on a regular basis. So there are things that you can do to protect yourself. There are lots of great natural supplementation. There's organic food. There are other products. I'm not wearing it right now, but I usually wear, I have a pendant that I wear around my neck. I don't work on my computer without it, that harmonizes electromagnetic field pollution. I have a cell chip on my phone. I have one on my computer. I use Gia Wellness, and they're on the products page of my site. You can go down and look into the company. They've been well researched. So there are a lot of things that you can do that you don't know about. When I see a mother who's pregnant talking on the cell phone, I just cringe, because the cells of a baby are so much more sensitive and compact, and they're being affected so much more harshly than ours are, and it's just horrible really for them. So you know, and then usually the baby's born and the mother's on the phone like that. So yeah, there's just lots of things to be aware of, so that you can, you know, shift and do the healthier choice, right?
Do you you mentioned like cognitive behavioral therapy and like occupational therapy. Do you find that sometimes after cleansing the body through supplements and food, that then children do need some kind of other kinds of behavioral therapy, or do you find that all of the symptoms are corrected just by food and supplements and nutrition? It's
very individual. It depends on the child. My son came out the other end as a completely different person. I mean, he was when he was diagnosed, I hope you all know you have to go to a specialist who knows autism spectrum disorders if that's what your issue is or you think it is, because we started taking my son to therapist when he was 5, and it was missed for 5 years from multiple people. He was not diagnosed until 3 months before his 10th birthday. And so you've got to find a specialist. And then same thing with occupational therapists. They really should be specialists in autism spectrum disorders, because it's very different than other kids. And they really need to know how to work with those kids. My son had been told, we were told, I laugh at it now, it's not, but that he had the worst case of oppositional defiance disorder she had ever seen. Today, he's calm, happy, peaceful, mellow guy. You wouldn't even think. I mean, it's just, but so we did, when he came out, you know, the other side, when it, you know, took me years because I didn't have this information in front of me. So he didn't really need anything more afterwards. But some people still will. They'll need help with, you know, sometimes just the general things of going into a store and purchasing something, or, you know, it's very individual, and it's just like the spectrum. Some kids are very, very mildly autistic, or just have ADD issues that they need to work with, and behavioral, and then there's the full other end of the spectrum and everything in between. So yeah, that's, you just know your child, and you make that decision of what you know, or talk to a specialist once they get to that part where you feel like, okay, maybe we should see if there's anything that we should know about here.
I just want to add to that.
Mhm.
We have
This is Dr. Martha Bordonaro. She's a chiropractor locally, and she's fabulous at muscle testing. Yes.
I found we have one of our twins is severely sensory overload, and I found that we went to Julie Daggett and her, the different people in her office, and I thought it was tremendous strategies for us. Not only teaching our son how to really look towards the positive things, and for us to teach in the positive moments and really affirm his good behaviors and really teach him that, but also the occupational therapist was phenomenal because they jump up and down, they do all kinds of physical things, they learn that they have to kick the pew at church because they can't stop their body from moving, and so she gave us bubble wrap foot pads. She gave us balls with holes in them that he could play with at church, and he had to do something to get that physical sensory experience. So I thought Julie did a great job with her team for the strategies for the family, and both twins went, so they knew exactly the same things. They were encouraged, given, you know, kind of good rewards for good behavior in the non-explosive moments, and then the OT really helped them with the physical. And I think the second twin is what the teacher would call quirky, which means that they think he's Asperger, but it hasn't been diagnosed. I had all that done. We spent like $12,000 on testing and, you know, trying to figure out what was going on with these guys. And sensory overload is really where they stopped. And so I just think your question was, do you just do this, you just do that? And I think the combination, you know, our kids are getting adjusted with chiropractic, I'm getting cranial work. Karen saw the one twin that's so bad, his face is really crooked. And she said, is he behavioral? And I went, yeah. And she said, I think I need to work on him. And she literally corrected his facial bones and his cranium, and even said his palate even clicked when she changed it. So that hadn't happened to her in like 20 years. So I think it's a good combination of things that we have access to, and you can use all of us for a reference on that in our own personal experiences. And her son is phenomenal, and I've gotten to know him through chiropractic, and he's just got this incredibly genuine, beautiful spirit about him. That seems to me like it was so clouded over. And now I see that coming out more and more, and it's college and engineering and all the stuff he's doing. It's just fantastic. And some of you guys know my twins, and they're not perfect, but they're a lot better than they used to be.
It's a process.
11.
I think one of the biggest or the most frustrating things if you have a child with those special needs is affording the care, because a lot of the issues we're finding is that the, you know, doctors, specialists don't accept insurance, they want cash, and it's a lot, and, you know, so it's really hard. Do you have any recommendations for that? Because it seems like people spend tons of, you know, but we don't have thousands of dollars
Right.
to throw into something like
That
this.
is
We
the
have other
problem.
children, we have bills, you know, and so to get your kids the care they need, if you can't afford it, there's nothing you can do. It's very frustrating.
Right. Well, and then again with these steps, that's why I wanted to tell you, like, okay, what to do and what stages and where you could buy what products that are quality at the least possible price, things like that. And that once you heal his system, his or her system, then on the other end, like I said, you'll know kind of, okay, what's left. Well, who is this? Who he is really. And then from there, you'll have less that you have to spend money on, because if you start in the beginning with the OT and AB, they can't do so much. It's this just so, and the kids just end up with bad self-esteem because they can't do what they want, what they're being asked, and what, yeah. So, you know, and for kids, because they, my normal sessions for adults are an hour and a half, 90 minutes long. Most kids aren't going to be there for that long. So I just charge by the minute. Sometimes I'm with them for 20 minutes, sometimes I'm with them for 40. It varies, but I just do it that way for how much, and I just go by how much they're willing to take that. Some just love it. Usually it's very interesting. You'll have a child that comes in and their mom will say they never want to go to appointments, and the second time they come back, they're like, they couldn't wait to get here. These kids that run up and hug you, and you're like,
And
it's
they
heartbreaking.
sleep.
And they sleep.
on the
Yes.
table, it's fantastic.
Yeah, and
It's so
and it
relaxing.
yeah, and at home too. Like the parents are like, oh my gosh, there's such a difference in them behaviorally and sleep and yes.
So when you're talking about the detoxing, like you said, you know, oftentimes they are someone else on the other end, then you can evaluate. So this process of detoxification in these 3 areas that you're focusing on, is there a timeline that we're looking at? You know, how
It's
long?
very individualized also, and I kind of give ideas along the way in the book. Like I think around for the, I think it's heavy metal. It might say like around week 7 or so, and then I'll explain why, because everybody's different, and muscle testing. You know what we could do really quickly is if I could demonstrate quickly how to muscle test, and do I have a volunteer? Want to come up? Okay. So, first of all, is your right shoulder okay if I do a muscle test?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm just going to have her put her arm straight out in front of her and make sure her elbow is straight, not bent. And I'm just going to have her be about this level. And it's not a big push. It's you get a big guy who says, "Wait, I wasn't ready." If it can be a 200-pound guy who works out every day, and if he's holding something in his other hand that his body doesn't like, he's going to be as weak as a baby. Okay, so I'm just going to use a couple fingers to demonstrate. So I'm going to press down. I want you to resist me. Okay. Okay. She's nice and strong. I'm actually giving quite a bit of pressure there. Okay. So I'm going to have you put this in your other hand. And now I'm going to muscle test again. And resist me. So she's weaker. And so that's sugar that I put in her hand. So you could be anything. You get rid of that nasty stuff. But yeah, that's basically a demonstration, a brief, and she still had a little bit of strength there. Sometimes there'll be nothing. It'll just go all the way down. So you can put a product in your other hand and see if you test good for that product. With dosages, you can do the testing and ask the question, you know, if it's a you know, how many milligrams a day, or how many scoops a day, or how many drops a day, and then when it stays strong, like 1 drop a day, 2 drops a day, 3 drops a day, at 4 it goes weak. Test again for 3 and it's strong. 3 drops a day right now, and that'll change over time. Yes, thank you.
Often you find that somebody has a mixed response based on whatever they have in their other hand. For instance, a person writes a prescription and then gives a coupon for the prescription, and they're really muscle testing against the ink from the printer and
Yes.
not the actual medication or supplement.
It is more beneficial if it's out of the bottle, because you can be reacting the plastic on the bottle. Plastic is a big allergen. It comes up a lot of the times. Our bodies are sensitive to it. Yeah, and then if you're drinking out of a plastic bottle, you're getting plastics into your body and not realizing that it's from the plastic in the container of. It's not even maybe the product or the liquid in the bottle, but the plastic. So yeah, you can also be affected by the ink on the label. So there are other things. The most effective way I've seen it really done, I just put it directly in her hand. That works. If you drop a tiny bit under the tongue of something, that's very strong because it gets right into the bloodstream. Sublingual pills, I think I missed saying vitamin B12. It's in your paperwork. Huge for our kids. Huge neuroprotective, helps the brain function. There's so much about B12 that is important, and it's really best absorbed as one of the sublinguals. They are little tablets that melt in a minute or less than in seconds. They have sprays, things like that you can use. I think Bobby's got some right here, B12 sprays. So they're, but by doing anything sublingual, it absorbs directly in the bloodstream in seconds. It's very effective that way. So it doesn't even have to try to get through the gut at all.
Question.
Yeah.
Paula Better did testing on my daughter when she was maybe 7, and she had her sit next to me and then hold little tubes in her hand with the different, I don't know what to call them.
The different
Yeah.
vials of serum.
And had us
Allergens.
just hold each other's thigh, so she
Mhm.
was touching me, I was touching her, and she actually did it on my
Yeah.
arm.
This is called surrogate testing. So you can test an infant the same way, and you use a secondary person as the tester in between. So it's called surrogate testing. It's very effective, just the same way. Yeah, so you can
For
test
elderly
any
people, too.
age.
Yeah.
Yeah, elderly people, definitely.
Dogs.
Yeah. Dogs, yeah.
Who doesn't dogs? You can test the fur too, people have brought me bags of fur. Because it is a living organism and it does detect the different things.
Right?
When you're talking about self-esteem and therapies and stuff, we have a wonderful lady, she's a neuromusic therapist in this area. And so she works with music and different types of disabilities and elderly and Parkinson's and dementia issues. But and now she's branching off into treating soldiers with post-traumatic stress. But this would be a therapy that you combine with all this other stuff because the kids get such an elevated sense of being able to perform. And it's a fun thing, and it brings up their self-esteem. So it's really great to see kids with autism and different disabilities singing together in a choir, which kids on the spectrum is like, oh. And to see that development go on. So she's so interested in combining this with the neuromusic therapy and how that works.
What is her name?
Victoria Lowry, she's one of 600 in the country, and she has Harmony and Health.
She's in San Luis?
No, she's in Atascadero.
Atascadero.
Oh, that's great.
Great,
Yeah,
thank you.
but she does work through Oceana, she does go to the home, she does go to convalescent homes, and she's able to test the kids on percussion, keyboard, and guitar. For example, kids on the spectrum, they're very tuned into tone instruments. So electronic instruments are better for them because they're on tone instead of out of tune piano. If you have an electronic keyboard, because some of the kids on the spectrum, it's like nails on the chalkboard if it's off tone. And so it's amazing to watch. I've been watching progressions of kids for 10 years now under her therapy, and it's just wonderful to see them come out.
Anything you can do to build their self-esteem is good too, period. Yeah, they have so much they've been down for their whole life, and people trying to control them because their behaviors.
Just wanted to say that we actually got for our kids Simonis music therapy. And it's not like it's music like la la la. It actually it helps them with their auditory processing.
Yes.
Hearing background noise and being able to tune out foreground. They're listening on the right ear, then it's tuned out the left ear, and it's all to music.
Yeah.
To build the neurotransmitters.
Right, and they are in my book as well. They're, yeah, and a lot of positive results. Great, yeah.
I just wanted to point that out. There is that out there.
It's getting a little later, and I don't want to keep anybody past their needs. The book is available on Amazon. I have some here tonight as well, and I'm just charging a straight $20 just to keep it simple tonight. No tax, no shipping. So if anybody's interested, you can purchase some here tonight as well. And if you have questions for Bobby or I, there are a lot of great supplements in the store that you can utilize. Thank you for coming.
Are you going to leave some
You are
of this
awesome.
here just in case?
I am. Thank you.